Hello, welcome to this first episode of Lifting the Lid. My name is Andy Ely. I'm a senior funeral director with G. Seller Independent Funeral Directors, and we've been serving bereaved families since 1910. Now, I'm sure you're all well aware there's lots and lots of different taboos, myths, misconceptions about what happens within the funeral profession. So we've decided to put this series of podcasts together to try and dispel some of those myths and answer any questions that you have. So if you do have any questions at all, please send us an email to liftingthelid@gseller.co.uk, and we do our best to answer them for you. It genuinely is our family caring for your family. And with this first episode, I thought it would be interesting for you to meet me and my co-host Joe. We'll be sharing the limelight here, delivering some of these messages to you. So, Joe, tell us a bit, how did you end up being in this scene?
Yeah, well, they asked me, was the first thing, I suppose I said yes. But I've always been interested in funerals. My dad was a funeral director as well, so I always remember when I was a kid, he'd go into the office perhaps on a Saturday morning, perhaps pick up something from the office, and as we was walking through his place, I'd always remember seeing sort of activities happening there, and always being really interested in what was going on. I always remember my sister, she'd be with us and she'd run out really scared, but I was always really interested in what was happening there. And then as you do, you get a bit older, and as I started college, needed a bit of beer money, so I asked if I could perhaps go in, relatable, perhaps if we could go in, and just start doing some back of house duties, so I cleaned the cars and, did everything you need to do back there. And then ultimately went to university, which didn't quite work out. Well, I ended up living in Hinckley.
That didn't work out then.
And from there, I saw the advert for the role of G. Seller come up to work back of house as a funeral operative. Was offered an interview, turned up in an old brown suit, which everybody there still reminds me of.
So we got any photos of that?
No photos of the brown suit, I'm afraid. I did chuck it out last time. I had to do a house clean out.
Shame.
And yeah, so that was 15 years ago now. I was, of course, offered the job role from funeral operative. They trained me as an embalmer. From there, trained me as a funeral director, until ultimately my role now is joint head of operations with my colleague Rhonda. Come a long way. It's been quite the journey from naff brown suit to podcasting. How about yourself?
Me, so I think it would be worthwhile saying just there, all those job roles that you spoke about, I think we'll be covering those across this series of podcasts and just a bit more detail. So me, I've got a completely different background. I originally, as a youngster, I wanted to be in the RAF. So I've obviously had a bit of a thing for shiny shoes and wearing a nice uniform. So in some way, I think I've kind of achieved it. My route changed at some point. I actually became qualified graphic designer photographer. Completely different to being a funeral director, of course. Something totally different. Rode a bit of a wave there. We used to do lots of photography, designs and so on. Lots of attention to detail. Everything had to be really precise. So I think some of those skills I've kind of brought into this. There was a point I needed to supplement my income, simple as that, and I gained a 5-hour contract with a corporate funeral provider. And you know what, I found it really rewarding. It was completely different, never considered it before. This was about 11 years ago, I guess. And I kind of made a decision, you know what, I actually enjoy doing that, giving something back to people, and like I say, really rewarding. So I made a decision to leave the photography behind me. I'd lost the passion of it, and come into the funeral profession and come into that. And I rode a bit of a wave within that profession, within the corporate company. Different job roles, like yourself, started as as an operative, as cleaning the cars, conveying people into care. Ultimately, when I finished, I ended up with 16 funeral homes that I was looking after, and I was approached by G. Seller, and having a local company, being able to give back to the local community, people that I know, it was a bit of a no-brainer really. So definitely the right choice for me. And then, like yourself, I was asked about this podcast, and I said yes.
And all of a sudden, the RAF seemed more appealing again.
Things change, don't they? I think it evolves for a reason. But the thing with us and our job role, I guess, is there's nothing to hide. We want to give as much information as possible. So, it's a real good thing.
Absolutely.
So that's a bit of a brief overview of us, a bit of how we arrived as to where we are. So please join us next time for the actual first episode, where we'll be talking about, what is the role of a funeral director. Of course, if you have any questions, please send them to liftingthelid@gseller.co.uk, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.